So before we dive into chapter 1 of Exodus, I think it might be helpful if we take a step back for a minute in quick overview, in review of what we've covered so far, and then kind of a preview of what's coming up so we orient better into these first chapters of Exodus. You'll notice that in the book of Genesis, which the word Genesis is this beginning idea, the initiation of something. So what's happened here is this is traditionally referred to as the first of the 5 books of Moses. One of the tasks that he had in front of him wasn't just to lead the children of Israel out of Egypt, it was to also to go back and abridge a whole bunch of scripture. Not just like 1,000 years of scripture, but we're talking 2,500 years of scripture. Because Moses is sometime around 1500 BC, 1400 BC. And so the book of Genesis is simply Moses's abridgment of everything that came before him. So you get the story of Adam and Eve and Enoch and Noah and Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and Joseph. That's all Genesis is Moses giving us this abridgment of these records. Now keep in mind, when Father Lehi takes the brass plates over to the New World, we find out in Mosiah chapter 1 that those brass plates were written in which language? Egyptian. And Nephi is writing in Egyptian, and all the subsequent authors on the Book of Mormon plates are writing in Egyptian, or Reformed Egyptian. By the time you get down to Moroni, he refers to it as Reformed Egyptian. So we're going back to Moses' beginnings here in Egypt. Everything seems to have its genesis or its beginning out of that language and that culture as far as the Bible and the brass plates, and consequently all of the golden plates that contain the Book of Mormon story. It brings us back to this learning of the Egyptians.
The Egyptians are actually the most prosperous, the largest empire in the world at that time. And imagine just like they have all the culture, all the science, all the learning. And the Egyptian language was like the language of commerce. It was the language of literature, the language of religion. And in some ways, we have English today that is used commonly throughout the world. Now, some people, it's a second language for them, but they want to engage in business or transactions or even understanding religion. They actually learn English. And the same thing anciently with Egyptian, it was the most powerful society. And there's just so much cultural influence that ends up being exerted on the Bible and the Israelite people. I mean, they emerge out of Egypt. Moses himself, I mean, his name is an Egyptian name. So it's all this kind of background influence of this Egyptian culture. Much like if we rolled the clock forward from today, like 2,000 or 3,000 or 4,000 years, people would say, man, there's this English everywhere, and there's so much culture going on from Western culture that's infused in what's going on in business and religion. And partly why we share this with you is because context matters. The word con actually means what goes with the text. And if you don't include the context with the text, all you're doing is just giving people a con. So if you only have the text, you don't get the whole context. So we're trying to give you a little bit of context here so that these words have more power and meaning so we can see the gospel and live it.
Yeah, so